Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Eve Marshall and I'm an artisan felter, and I'm here this morning to show you how to needle felt onto Easter eggs. So if I just pull the camera down there, you can see this morning I will show you how to make a little bunny, and I will also show you how to make a lovely spring inspired egg. So some daffodils and things like that. So welcome, I can see people joining. Hello everyone. Usually when it's not the middle of the pandemic, I'm teaching at Riverside about 3 times a month at least. So I miss you guys and I can't wait to come back and do some more teaching once we're allowed to be a bit more open. So I'm here today to show you how to make some little Easter needle felted eggs. We're going to use a polystyrene base, and I'm going to push the camera down so you can see where I'm working here. Okay, so with needle felting you always need a surface to work on. A piece of foam is a great thing to work on, and they sell them at Riverside beads too, so not very much money. Mine lasts about 6 months or so, and you also need needles. So the 2 sizes I like to use are a 36 and a 38. And the needles, they look like little walking sticks. So they've got a bent bit at the top, a very sharp point at the bottom, and barbs along that edge there. So quite hard to see. But the reason they work is because they're barbed. So if you look at wool under a microscope, it's got little tiny barbs along the fibers, and the needles have barbs, so when you're pushing the needle through the wool, it's like a Velcro. It sort of pushes all the barbs together and tangles itself together. So I can see loads of you have joined now. Hello. If you have questions while we're going through, just type them in and I will try and see them, and I will try and answer them as we go. So we're making a couple Easter eggs this morning, a little bunny and a little spring inspired one there. So I'm just going to push you down again so you can have a look here. 2 sizes of needles are important because one is great for sculpting and one is great for adding detail. So the sculpting one is good to start off with because it gets the wool attached very quickly, and then the 38 is good for then adding little flowers and eyes and noses and things like that to pieces. So you can use either needle for either thing, but one makes one easier and one makes the other easier. And for me, it's a lot easier to have my needle in a handle. After needle felting for 15 years, my hands hurt, so I like having some handles, and it also, when I'm looking at the top of them, I can tell which is which. So I've got my thicker one and my thinner one there. A lot of people ask, you know, can you tell the difference when you're looking at a needle, what size it is? I usually say to people, as a beginner, it's quite hard to tell the difference. One has quite scary looking barbs and one has less scary looking barbs. Also, different companies, different sizes. It's not like a knitting needle that just has a size on the top. And they also come in different shapes. So the main one that I use for felting is a triangular needle. But there are star shapes and there are reverse ones and all sorts of them, but basically the lower the number, the thicker the barbs, and the higher the number, the finer the barbs. So a 36 and a 38 is pretty much what I use for needle felting everything in my life. Sometimes I'll use a 42 just for adding tiny details, but mainly it's just just those two. So I'm just going to show you, we'll try and show you how to do those. Anyways, polystyrene egg here, needle here. So I'm going to start with my 36 size needle, the polystyrene egg, and then I've got some merino wool here that I'm going to use. So when you buy it through the shop, you usually get like a 20-gram piece approximately. So you can buy a couple bundles. They've got deals and things in the shop for it. So this piece here is about 5 grams, I guess. So, you know, you can get quite a lot of eggs out of a bundle. And merino wool, when you're using it to needle felt onto a surface, it's great if you mix it up first. So when you buy it, all of the fibers are going in the same direction, and to help attach it to your egg, it's helpful if you sort of start the felting process by sort of fluffing it up a bit. So I'm just gonna fluff it up here. Now, when you're needle felting onto polystyrene, it's very important that you hold the egg in one hand so that your hand isn't covering up a large amount of the egg. It really, really, really hurts when you poke yourself. So you don't want to have your hand in the way. It's one of those crafts that you kind of need to pay attention to the whole time you're doing. So as not to poke your hand or break the needle. So I've got that whole big clump that I started with, and I'm just fluffing it up. I'm just pulling off a little clump. So if you try and take a big clump like that and needle felt it onto your egg, it will take you many, many hours. But if you pull a little chunk of it off and mix it up and lay it on top of your egg, it will not take as long. It will be quite quick. So got my needle here. I'm gonna start stabbing. So you want to stab 6 or so times and turn it. You can hear that crunch, that's good. You want to get sort of most of those barbs going through the wool and into the egg. I'm going to pull off another clump here. Now, because it's polystyrene and you're stabbing it with a needle, if you stabbed it, you know, say for an hour with this needle, it would probably chew it apart and your egg would fall apart, which would be a shame. So we're not poking it a lot. You can see that all of those bits are sort of hanging off and they're sort of attached. It doesn't matter, because what we're going to do is add detail to it. We're going to make sure all of the spaces are covered up with wool. So there's no point in making one piece absolutely perfect and then moving on to the next piece, because otherwise you're going to just go, you're going to be needle felting for a week, basically. I try and teach sort of the instant gratification of felting, and, you know, just can get lots more done quickly. So I'm just pulling off some more wool now, fluffing it up, finding a bare spot and poking it on. So with the needle, you always want to go straight down and straight out. You never want to push your needle in from the side or try and pull fibers over, because you're much more likely to snap the needle. The needles are really brittle and they snap very easily. And a lot of times if I'm teaching a beginner's class, you get loads of snapped needles. And it happens. And the reason it happens is either that someone's hit their fingernail, which is painful, or someone has pushed their needle in and then turned the egg before they've pulled their needle out. That snaps a lot of needles. Someone's tried to pull pull fibers over with their needle. That snaps the needle. So I was talking to an engineer friend of mine about, you know, that I have boxes and boxes of snapped needles, and why haven't they created a needle that doesn't snap yet? And he said that it's impossible to make the metal that thin with the barbs on it and not have it be brittle. So there we go. Needles will snap. I have been needle felting for about 15 years and my needles snap a lot less now. You know, sometimes it happens, but mainly my needles last for about 6 months or so before I need to change them. So it just comes from experience. So I'm fluffing up the wool because it makes it attach easier for the merino wool. Merino wool is nice because it comes in all sorts of different colors. In the shop they have so many lovely pastel-y colors and nice rich sort of duck eggs and bright yellows, all sorts of colors in there. So I'm just going around now and I'm just stabbing in all of the fibers, tightening them up a bit. You can see I've got a bald spot there. I've got sort of a thin area there, so I'm just going to grab a bit more wool. Still using the same sort of 5 grams that I pulled off in the beginning, so you don't need loads of wool. And also it would take you a lot longer to attach the wool in place. So that crunch is good. A lot of people ask, well, what about all the holes in the egg? And what I say is, you know, the more your egg is sort of sat in our warm houses, the sort of humidity of the house takes away some of the holes. There's a lot of felters that graduate in needle size to take away less of the sort of lumpy bumpy texture of their needle felts, but to me, if you're felting something out of wool, then it should be fluffy. You know, why does it have to be that smooth? The one that I've made here is a lot smoother because I've added lots of surface detail with the finer needles, so you can still see holes, but you know, it's gonna be hanging on an Easter tree, so how many people are gonna be sat next to it and analyzing how many holes are in your egg? Not many. So this needle is great because it gets the fibers on there quick and we don't worry about too much about what it looks like, because the next part of it is where we do the smoothing and the making pretty. This bit is basically making the egg the color you want it to be. So it doesn't have to be all one color. It's just easier to show you in this demo to make it all one color rather than not. So my egg is pretty much all green there. Okay, so I was using a 36 size needle to cover it. Now I'm going to move on to the 38, which is a bit finer. Just going to go around now quickly and just smooth out some of those lumpy bumpy bits on it. It doesn't matter how fast you needle felt, okay? So I'm going quite quickly because this is a live video and I don't want to keep you on for hours, but you know, you can go slowly. The main important thing is that the needle has to come out of the same hole that it went in, so you don't want to pull it off at a different angle because you'll snap your needle. And you don't want to go in from the sides of your egg. You always want to turn your egg to needle felt it. So I know in the shop you get a couple, I think 2 or 3 needles of each size in each pack, which is really good because as beginners, you know, they snap quite easily, but they're not a very expensive material to buy, so you know, you get used to them after a while. So that's smoothed it off a bit now. Now we're going to add some decoration. So there's different ways of adding flower stems. I've got a little bit of darker green here. Same thing, merino wool. I'm just going to pull off a little tiny piece. Now, you never want to cut wool fibers because that cut edge doesn't felt as well as a pulled edge. You want your fibers quite long for this. So instead of cutting them, you can sort of rip them apart and they'll become shorter, but you can always just needle felt them back on themselves to make them shorter too. So I'm just twiddling that little bit of green between my fingers and find the bottom of my egg, And the stem can start just down on the bottom there, and I've just laid it on top and I just stab it in place. And you can see that's given me a little stem there. And I'll take another piece, make another stem. So I'm going to make some daffodils on here. Got another piece of green. If you have wool at home and you need to get some eggs and some needles, that's cool. Another fibre that you can use is knitting wool. So this wool here is like 100% wool, but say you're a knitter and you got wool that, or a crocheter that is like 50% wool or 30% wool, it will usually needle felt in. So if I take a little bit of that wool there and lay it on top of my egg, I can stab that in place too, and that makes quite a nice stem for a flower. Okay, let's make a little daffodil. So I've got some yellow wool here. Again, just gonna pull off a little chunk of it or rip it so that I have a tiny piece, and then I'm just going to sort of roll it into a little sausage, little fluffy sausage, and lay that on top of my stem. You can see that my other hand isn't holding it in place because the wool is only going to attach where I stab it. So if I hold it very tightly in place, there's way more chance of me stabbing my finger, which will really hurt. So I just lay my little sausages on top, and then the needle will attach them in. And if I only stab them in a line, then they're only going to attach in a line. And I didn't have to faff with them too much. Okay, so let's go sort of impressionist rather than each detail has to be right. The first time when I did my egg, I did 5 petals on my daffodils, and then I realized that daffodils have 6 petals. So anyway, I could go back and change it. One of the nice things about needle felting is that if something's in the wrong place and you haven't needle felted it that much, you can peel it off again. Okay, so you made a daffodil and then you realize actually you want your daffodil over here. So all those bits that I peeled off over there, I can attach them over here. That's one of the nice things about it. So if I'm doing like a big picture and I've needle felted a hair and he hasn't been needle felted very much, I can just peel him off and move him somewhere else, which I do quite a lot because I changed my mind and I think, oh, I should have started the big daffodil in the middle rather than starting the daffodil on the side. So just gonna stab those bits into place. I've got 4 petals on there now. Just gonna add another 2. So you could needle felt sort of any sort of design onto them. Little spots look quite nice. I've done little hearts, done flowers, did a little rainbow. I'll show you those in a bit. So I've done my 6 petals and I'm gonna grab a little bit of orange and stick it in the middle, so people know that it's a daffodil there. Okay, so my next daffodil could be one that hasn't bloomed yet and therefore takes less time to faff about with. We just shove a little bit of yellow on top of the stem. There we go, we've got another daffodil there. I can add one over here now, so a little bit of yellow rolled up in there. You can see that stem is coming in the middle of that bit. I'm going to change my mind now. I'm going to pull it off and bring it down there and have my next one down there just to give it a bit more interest so that they all don't intersect each other. So as I'm adding the surface design, the light green that I added in the background is getting more felted now. So like when I began and said, you know, you don't have to needle felt it that much to begin with, It's true, because now it's getting a whole bunch more poking done to it. So if you spent 2 hours adding the light green to it, you know, and then you're going to add detail to it, it's a bit of a waste of time. I prefer just to go through it, and then I can always go back at the end and I can needle felt my egg again some more. So if you have questions while I'm going through, please be sure to ask them. I'm happy to answer anything. I've been needle felting for about 15 years now, so I have tried all sorts of things, and with my teaching I try and teach people like instant gratification of felting rather than the stabbing for days type felting, because really, you know, if you're making some Easter eggs, you want to make, say, 6, one for each of your friends or one for each of your family members. You don't want to be stabbing all day just to make one. Okay, so we've got some daffodils there. Let's add some tulips. So I'm going to grab a couple different pinks and mix them up. So tulips, a lot of tulips, are sort of lovely sort of variegations of colour. So mixing colours up is quite nice. Just ripped those fibres off. Just going to roll it in a little ball and stab it in down there. I don't really plan out much of my designs. I just shove them in as I go, and if they don't look right, I peel them off and move them somewhere else. But I guess on this picture my tulips are miniature compared to my daffodils, but you know, tulips come in all shapes and sizes, so that's okay. I've got my 4 lumps there. I'm going to use some more of my wool here. That is okay to cut, but don't cut your wool fibers. If you've come to one of my workshops, you'll know that don't let people have scissors until they absolutely need it, and then I take them all back again, because people are so tempted to cut off extra fibers. You can see that extra one there. I can stab that right in. I could snip it off, but you know what? If I stab it in, it makes it nicer there. So I've just added a stem just with a bit of knitting wool. So if your knitting wool has sort of a small percentage of actual wool in it, it's a lot more likely to attach into your egg. I haven't really tried just acrylic. Not sure it would work because it's sort of plasticky, so it has to sort of have a natural barb to it. Although, you know, silk will work to a little bit. Ooh, and there we go, stabbed in my finger. Always good to do in a live. It's because I was not paying attention. I was looking at the screen instead of looking at my egg. And there you go, goes through my finger. So if you are afraid of stabbing your fingers, you can wear some little rubber thimbles to hold your piece with, and then if you stab yourself, it just stabs into there instead. So if you are someone that doesn't like to be stabbed with needles, there is an option for you. So we've got some tulips on there, we've got some daffodils. If I just take a little bit of white wool now and roll it into a ball. If you sat and like rolled this into a ball a lot, it would be really hard for it to attach, so there needs to be sort of the loose fibers in there to attach. If you rolled it into a ball a lot, then you'd sort of be wet felting it into a lump, and then there's nothing there to it for it to attach to. So having the loose fibers sticking out everywhere means that there's something to attach into that egg. So I'm just adding some little things that are going to be daisies maybe. And again, I don't need to use my needle to pull fibers over. I can either do it with my finger, or if I only just go round and round in a circle, they're only going to attach in a circle. Now, daisies have little yellow centers, so I'm just gonna take off a bit of yellow and push them into my centers of my white flowers. And they become something that looks a bit like a daisy or a fried egg, depending on how hungry you are. Okay, so I've got some daisies on there, some tulips and some daffodils. I'm going to move on to my other egg so I can show you how to do a little bunny. But if you want to add a string to the top of your egg, you can needle felt that in place too. So it can be just regular string, but I've got this twisted wool here that I'm going to use because it seems like all my eggs I'm making at the moment have this on them. So just going to tie that into a knot there, and then take a little bit of my background wool, lay that on top there, on top, and then just place the background color on top of the wool there, and then stab it in place. So it would work the same with string, because this is wool that has wool in it. It needle felts itself to the egg too, but if you use just string or wire or something, it would just needle felt it in like that, and then you've got a lovely little hanging egg. So like I said before, you can go back and you can needle felt it all over some more, and then it will become sort of a smoother edge to it. But I just wanted to show you how to do a couple different things this morning, so I thought we'll just go over that one quickly. So I'm going to show you how to do a bunny now. Where's my bunny gone? Here he is. Little bunny. Quite fun. Looks fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Riverside bead folks. That's cool. Nice project to do. As an example, here's a pink egg with hearts all over it. And there is a little chick here that I've done with yellow wool and some curls. And this one's got a sheep stuck on it with some crazy sparkly spots, because why not? So just other ideas of what you can do with eggs. You know, the eggs themselves don't cost very much, and they make, you know, a really nice gift for someone. If you put that with a little bunch of daffodils for someone, I think, you know, that would make such a nice Easter gift. Okay, so we've got our polystyrene egg again. I'm starting with my 36 needle because I want to get the wool attached quickly. Now this wool is different, so this is more like a core wool. It's a British wool rather than the merino wool, so you don't have to really fluff this one up as much because it's will needle felt a lot easier anyway. So you want to pull off a piece that you can see through, lay it on top of your egg, and again just stab it in place. As I'm stabbing, you can see that the egg is coming through. That's okay. It's a lot easier to needle felt smaller pieces of wool rather than taking a really big thick piece and trying to stab it on. It takes less time to do 20 fine pieces rather than 3 thick pieces, trust me. I have witnessed many people in my workshops trying to save time and stabbing on thick pieces, and it never really attaches, because really all what you're doing with your needle is stabbing into the wool and felting the layer of wool together rather than pushing the fibers into the polystyrene. So if you needle felted it too much, so say I sat here and stabbed this egg for an hour or so with this thicker needle, probably it would start eating away at the polystyrene. And that would be a shame. So we try and do it quite quickly. So we're just adding fluffy pieces so that we don't see any of the egg underneath anymore. And you can see as I'm doing it, I'm rolling the egg around because I don't want the needle to snap. So if the needle goes straight down and straight out every time, and I move the egg as I'm working on it, rather than pushing the needle in from the side, it will stay in one piece. I can see lots of people watching, but if you have questions, let me know. Happy to help. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in today. I'm hoping we can do some face-to-face classes in the summer. But for now, we've got to be online, so at least we can be online here and showing you all how to use the materials that are in the Riverside shop. So I know that I think Donna put a link into all the supplies that are available in the online shop. They've got the needles, and they've got the wool, and they've got the handles, and they've got the foam. So, you know, for under 20 quid, you could start making Easter presents. Okay, I am almost covered. I can just see a couple little bare areas there. You know, because it's a white needle and the wool is white, well, undyed, it doesn't hugely matter. You know, again, it's going to be hanging on an Easter tree. How many people are going to walk over to it and be like, oh, I see egg there, I see egg there. It's going to be hanging up, no one's going to know. If you're making them and they're going to be held and touched and, you know, looked at, then I would just needle felt them a little bit more, especially if they're going to be near little hens. I know that sometimes when I was needle felting around my nan, she would hold it and she'd just start trying to peel off like a little bit of something that was stuck in it, and then eventually it would just peel off everything, and you just thought, oh, come on. It's supposed to be fluffy, it's a bunny. Okay, so it's mostly covered in white now. We're going to make a little tiny snout for our bunny, so I've just got some of that nice natural British wool here, and I'm just going to fluff it up. Now, on top of my piece of foam, I'm going to stab that little lump of white, because what I want it to do is stand out from the egg, and I'm turning it every couple of pokes because I want it to go sort of roundish. If I just took a little lump of wool here and needle felted it on one side, it would just become a pancake. So if I did 20 pokes like this and then tried to turn it, it's a bit harder for it to go into a ball. So what we're aiming for is a little tiny ball, just for a little tiny snout on a bunny, because bunnies' faces aren't flat. They've got sort of a little snout going on. Not going hyper realistic here. Okay, so we've got nice egg there covered in white. We've got his little snout there. If I hold it to the side, you can see it's sticking out there. So I'm going to use my finer needle now, and I'm just going to needle felt around the edge. So instead of stabbing right through the top, that would flatten his snout. I'm just going to needle felt around that edge so that the edge gets attached into the egg. rather than me flattening out that lovely lump that I just made. So just go around a couple times. And if you've needle felted your lump too much, it's quite hard to make it attach then. Like I was saying before, it needs sort of little fibers sticking out. So if you're having a hard time attaching it, you can grab another little bit of wool and needle felt it onto your lump, and then needle felt it onto his face, and that acts as like a little plaster to hold that in place. So you can see we've got like a little snout on our bunny. Now we're going to do his ears. So I'm going to take off some more white wool here, and I'm going to lay them down onto my piece of foam. I want pieces that are evenish. You see those there. Okay, so thicker needle again, size 36 there, one with the bigger barbs. I want to leave one end fluffy so that I have something to attach to the rabbit's head, and then I just want to stab all the way down there. So the piece of foam that I'm working on is, I don't know, about 2 inches deep. I don't need my needle to be banging on the table. That means I'm going too far down with my needle. I only need the part with the barbs to press through the wool and into the foam. So just needle felt sort of 10-15 times there, and turn it over and stab it sort of 10-15 times on the other side. Same with the other ear. Again, there's no point in sitting and making the most perfect ear in the whole world and then trying to repeat it with the second ear. Best make 2 ears at the same time so they sort of match. The more you stab wool, the smaller and tighter it becomes. So I know that if one is like looking massive and the other one's looking tiny, then I can do the massive one a bit more to make it a bit tinier. Or, you know, if they're really out of proportion, you can take a bit more wool and add it in on top of it. So at the moment, they are loosely felted together, and they're like massive. Okay, so if I add them to my bunny, he's got a bit of a sort of crazy ear thing going on. So we want to make them smaller. So I'm going to fold in that top edge there to shorten them a little bit. I've still got my fluffy end there so I can attach them. And then I'm going to fold in the edges so that they become narrow, more narrow. So fold it in and stab it in place, and then fold in the other edge towards the middle, sort of like a tri-fold. That's quite nice if as you're needle felting it, you get then that sort of indent in the middle of the ear, which is sort of natural to rabbits, isn't it? So before stabbing, after stabbing, looks a bit more of the size I want. So again, I'm gonna fold that top bit over and stab it in place, and then I'm going to pull that edge in, stab it in place, and then fold the other edge in. Now I kind of want it to look like number 1 ear, so I'm going to hold them next to each other so that they can sort of be the same shape-ish. Now, if I hold it up, you can see all of the fluff coming out the back of my ear. Now, the reason that's happened is because I've been pushing my needle firmly through the wool fibers and into the foam, so all of those fibers are sticking out. If I want them to become a flatter surface, I can lay it on top of my foam using the same needle, and instead of stabbing all of those barbs through the wool and into the foam, I'm just going to stab half of them. So I'm just going to stab it so it goes into the center of the ear rather than all the way through into the foam. And you can see that starts to smooth off some of those pieces there. So do the same with the other side. So you can hear like less of the crunch there, and we just get sort of a smoother ear. Same on the other side. Sorry, on the other ear. And I'm just going to put a little bit of pink in the middle of the ear just to make it a little springier. So I've got the wool fibers there. Let me show you again. So I take the long piece of wool and fold it in half, and then pinch a piece off of it so that all of the fluffy bit goes down there, and I've got like a nice little loop there. I'm going to use my finer needle, so the 38, and stab it in. So I don't want to stab firmly because I don't want pink on the back of my ears. I just want pink on the front. So I don't need to stab all the way into the foam. I'm just stabbing into the center of the ear again. So I've got a little pink bit in the middle of the ear there. Same with the other side. I want to fold it. So I've got little arch bit there and the fluffy fibers going down. It just creates that shape without me sort of thinking about it too much. So a gentle poke. And then we've got 2 ears for our bunny. Just gonna take a drink now because I'm losing my voice. Okay. So we've got our bunny here, his little snout. All that fluffy edge there is going to attach into the back of our bunny's head. So I'm going to sort of line up where I want the ear on his head. And then all that fluffy part can be stabbed in place. And I'm going to use the thicker needle to do that with, just because it will take a bit less time. And then I can go back and finesse it nicely in place with my finer needle. So we've got one ear there, and take the other ear and put it on the other side and stab all that fluffy bit down his back. So we've got 2 ears on our bunny. Now, if I swap to the finer needle again, I can sort of hold the ear in place and stab around the base of it. So you want to be careful of your fingers at this stage, but it means it sort of stays in place rather than flopping over the top of his head. So it's just pushing the needle through the ear and into the egg there, just so they stand to attention. We're going to add a little pink dot to the end of his nose. So I'm just going to pull off a tiny piece of fiber, roll it round in my fingers, and put on the end of his snout, and then gently with my fine needle. So if I push firmly, it will go into his snout, which I don't want to do. I just want it to sit on the top. So gently push that into place, and he's got a little nose, and then we just need some little eyes for him. So I'm just going to pull off a little bit of black merino wool here. Again, rip the fibers, put a little eye there. If you're thinking about where the eyes go, it's usually sort of halfway between the base of the ear and the nose. So if I think about halfway between there and there, sort of there-ish. So I've got a little bunny there. So we've had little bunny, we've had nice daffodils there. I'll put you up here so you can see me. Hello everyone, thanks for joining in. My name's Eve Marshall, and I'm usually teaching at Riverside Beads, and I can't wait to teach again soon. So if you have any questions, you can put them onto this video, and either I or someone from the shop will answer them. And I hope to see you soon for another live. Thank you for watching, and hope you all have a nice day. Bye-bye.